You are suspended. Marcus Reed trusted the numbers until he discovered they were rigged. When he exposed the truth, they took his job and tracked his every move. But as Martin Luther King Jr. said, silence in the face of injustice is itself injustice. If he stays quiet, millions will suffer. If he fights back, he might lose everything. What would you do? 30 you. Second floor, Morgan & Lyle, one of Wall Street's most powerful banks. Marcus Reed's office was sleek, minimalist, impeccably organized. But the numbers flashing across his computer screen were anything but stable. Beyond the glass windows, New York City moved like a well-oiled machine, towering skyscrapers casting their long shadows over the endless flow of people below. But here, in this insulated world, separated from the city's relentless noise, there was only the quiet hum of the air conditioning and the rhythmic tapping of keys. A silence thick with tension, the kind that signaled something was deeply wrong. Marcus Reed, 40 years old, financial data analyst, a mathematical genius, precise as the algorithms he programmed every day. He trusted numbers. Numbers didn't lie, but today, something wasn't right. His eyes flicked across the live data feed, real-time figures shifting with every second. Morgan & Lyle had deployed its AI lending algorithm 3 months ago, cutting-edge technology designed to optimize loan rates for clients. Marcus's fingers moved swiftly over the keyboard. He entered a sample profile, a customer earning $60,000 per year. The system returned an interest rate of 6%. He tested another scenario, a client making $45,000 per year. The rate jumped to 8%. Marcus frowned. He lowered the income to $30,000 per year. The interest rate shot up to 12%. His hands froze. His pulse quickened. "That can't be right," he muttered, dragging the screen closer. The AI wasn't just adjusting rates based on credit scores. It was using income as a primary factor to drive interest rates higher. He ran another test. The results were even worse. A slow, cold dread settled in his stomach. Marcus exhaled sharply, fingers flying across the keyboard as he pulled up the system logs. The AI wasn't supposed to factor income into its calculations. If this was happening, someone had deliberately altered the algorithm. He opened the source code. Thousands of lines of code scrolled across the screen, a sea of endless characters. Line 45112. Marcus stiffened. His cursor flicked through the edit history. This line of code hadn't existed in the original version he had reviewed. Someone had inserted it. He clicked deeper into the metadata, searching for timestamps, author credentials. Nothing. Everything had been wiped. His hand tensed over the mouse. His throat went dry. Marcus took a slow, measured breath. He wasn't naive. 15 years in finance had exposed him to the industry's ugliest corners. But this was something else entirely. One of Wall Street's biggest banks was manipulating interest rates, exploiting low-income customers for profit. If this got out, Morgan & Lyle's stock would collapse. Federal investigations would follow. People would face criminal charges, and if the bank knew he had uncovered this, his heart pounded. A sharp chill ran down his spine. Slowly, he closed his laptop, staring at the black screen that now reflected his own uneasy face. One thought pulsed through his mind. What the hell have I just uncovered? 32nd floor, Morgan & Lyle Marcus leaned back in his chair, eyes still locked on the black screen of his closed laptop. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. as if the very walls around him knew something he didn't. Outside the window, the city lights reflected coldly off the glass. New York moved on, oblivious. But here, on the 32nd floor of Morgan and Lyle, a secret was waiting to be uncovered. Marcus couldn't walk away. Data didn't lie, and if the algorithm had been tampered with, there had to be a trace. He inhaled deeply, reopened his laptop, and began typing. The screen flickered back to life, casting a faint blue glow across his face. This time, he wouldn't just test the system, he needed to dig deeper. Accessing the source code. Thousands of lines of code streamed across the screen, a river of data flowing endlessly. Marcus scanned through them, searching for anything out of place. Then he found it. A hidden file, AI lending model, confidential. His heartbeat quickened. He clicked it open. The code was dense but unmistakable. Embedded within the script, a set of encrypted comments stood out. Profit optimization algorithm. Adjusted for maximum revenue. Priority target. Low-income borrowers. Ensure long-term debt retention. Marcus's breath hitched. This wasn't an error. This wasn't a flaw in the system. This was deliberate. A calculated strategy designed to exploit low-income customers, trapping them in a cycle of inescapable debt. His fists clenched. He had been in finance long enough to know what this meant. Banks had played interest rate games before, but nothing this precise, nothing this predatory. An algorithm had no morals. It followed orders, and someone had programmed it to turn poverty into profit. Marcus's chest tightened with rage. He pulled up a simulation tool, entering variables to test the algorithm's behavior. The results appeared instantly. The interest rates spiked as income dropped. For incomes above $50,000 a year, rates stayed stable at 6%. For incomes below $40,000 a year, rates jumped to 9%. For incomes below $30,000 a year, rates skyrocketed to 15%, nearly impossible to repay. Marcus opened another window, checking projected default rates. 70% of low-income borrowers wouldn't be able to pay on time, which meant they would have to take on more debt to cover their old loans. A financial death spiral. A cold shiver ran down his spine. The email. Marcus clenched his jaw and pulled up the company's internal email system. Subject: Urgent. Critical issue in lending algorithm. He typed quickly, keeping his tone professional but firm. I've identified a serious issue in our AI lending system. Data suggests that the algorithm is significantly increasing interest rates for lower-income borrowers, which raises severe ethical and legal concerns. This needs immediate review. His cursor hovered over send. Then he hesitated. A nagging voice whispered in the back of his mind. What if the higher-ups already knew? What if they were the ones who ordered the change? Marcus swallowed hard, staring at the words on the screen. Then he took a deep breath and hit send. The email vanished from his outbox. He leaned back in his chair, but there was no relief, because he knew the real storm was still ahead. The night before, Marcus sat in front of his computer, the cold blue glow illuminating his tense face. The email was sent. Subject: Critical violation detected in AI lending system. He double-checked the contents one last time, ensuring every data, set, every chart, every piece of incriminating evidence was attached. He knew he had just gambled his entire career on this. He hit send. Minutes later, a reply landed in his inbox. Sender: Eleanor Price. Meet me at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Marcus sat up. Straight. That was fast. Too fast. High-level meetings like this usually took days to arrange. Eleanor already knew. Tensors AM, Morgan and Lyle. Headquarters, Marcus stepped into Eleanor Price's office. The door clicked shut behind him with a soft thud. The space was bathed in natural light, but there was no warmth to it, a massive walnut desk. Shelves lined with pristine financial reports. Every inch of the office radiated control. And sitting behind the desk, Eleanor Price, 38. Powerful, calculated, a woman who never showed weakness. She glanced up, offering a small, unreadable smile. "Sit down, Marcus." Marcus didn't hesitate. He placed his laptop on the desk, opened the report, and turned the screen toward her. The data was crystal clear. The system hadn't just assessed financial risk. It had been programmed to ensure that the poorest customers remained trapped in debt. He pointed at the graphs, his voice firm. This algorithm isn't just pricing risk. It's been designed to make sure low-income borrowers never escape. Eleanor leaned back, fingers interlacing. She wasn't surprised. "I see," she murmured. Then, after a pause, "Marcus, how long have you worked in finance?" Her tone was patient, almost condescending, like she was explaining reality to a naive intern. Marcus didn't answer. Eleanor continued, "Banks aren't charities. We provide financial services. Every loan is based on risk. If someone has poor credit, they pay higher interest. That's how the world works." Marcus clenched his jaw. He kept his voice steady. "Then explain why the rates spike so aggressively. This isn't risk-based lending anymore. It's manipulation." Eleanor let out a quiet laugh. "You really think you've uncovered some massive scandal?" Marcus's fists clenched under the desk. She didn't deny it. She didn't confirm it. She just made it murky. Eleanor tapped a manicured finger against the desk. "I think you're letting emotions cloud your judgment." A cold wave ran down Marcus's spine. She knew. She knew he didn't have enough evidence to bring formal charges. She knew he was just a data analyst with no power to fight a billion-dollar institution. He had walked into this meeting hoping for an internal investigation. Instead, Eleanor had made him feel like a fool for even trying. She calmly closed his laptop. "I appreciate your diligence, Marcus. I'll look into this." Marcus stood, locking eyes with her. "You knew about this already, didn't you?" Eleanor tilted her head slightly, her gaze razor-sharp. "Marcus, if I were you, I'd focus on my job instead of chasing things that lead nowhere." The first warning. Marcus's knuckles tightened, but he said nothing. He turned and walked out. The door shut behind him. Days later, Marcus kept working as usual, but the feeling wouldn't leave him. Eleanor was hiding something. So he dug deeper, and then he found it. Some of the loan funds had been diverted, not to company accounts, not to client accounts, to a private account, and the name on that account, Eleanor Price. Marcus froze, staring at the screen. Now he understood why she hadn't been worried. She wasn't just covering for the bank. She was profiting from it herself. That night, Eleanor's phone rang. On the other end, a nervous IT director, Ms. Price. "I think Marcus Reed is digging into the system." Eleanor wasn't surprised. She smiled faintly, drumming her fingers against the desk. "I see. Leave it to me. I'll take care of it." The next morning, Marcus arrived at work as usual. But when he tried to log in, a message flashed across his screen. "Your account has been disabled." Please contact HR. A chill spread through his chest. His phone buzzed. An email from HR Marcus read, "You have been indefinitely suspended. Effective immediately." Then another notification, a text from his bank, "Your accounts have been frozen." Marcus's breath came sharp and fast. Eleanor had made her move. And this was only the beginning. The night air was cold as Marcus stepped out of Morgan & Lyle. New York pulsed with life as always, but for Marcus, everything had changed. He was no longer just a financial data analyst at a powerful bank. He had become an enemy of the system. Eleanor had moved too fast. Less than 24 hours after he uncovered the suspicious financial transfers, she had erased him from the banking system, swiftly, efficiently, and without hesitation. Marcus clenched his jaw as he pulled out his phone and opened his banking app. A simple, ruthless message flashed across the screen. "Your account has been frozen. Please contact customer support." A chill crawled down his spine. They hadn't just fired him, they were wiping him out. Marcus tightened his grip on his phone, scanning the streets for an ATM. It took only a few minutes to find one tucked into the corner of a quiet office building. He slid his card into the reader, entered his PIN. Waiting. 1 second, 2, 3. Then, a cold, unfeeling message in bright red text, "Card invalid. Please contact your bank." Marcus's stomach sank. He tried again. Same result. They had cut off every financial avenue he had. Marcus inhaled deeply, forcing himself to stay calm. But unease was creeping in. Something felt wrong. He stepped back onto the street, glancing over his shoulder, just for a second. But it was enough. Someone was following him. Across the road, a black car sat parked about 50 meters away. The engine was running. The headlights were off. Marcus couldn't see who was inside, but instinct screamed at him. Someone was watching. He turned onto a different street, quickening his pace. The car rolled forward. Not too fast, not too slow, keeping perfect distance. "They're tracking me." Marcus pulled out his phone and opened his messages. He started to type, to reach out to a friend, someone in finance who might help him. But before he could send anything, a new message appeared from an unknown number. "Stop before it's too late." Marcus stopped dead in his tracks. They were watching his phone. They knew everything. A cold sweat prickled at the back of his neck. He needed to get out of here. Now, he turned onto a busier street, weaving through the crowd. His fingers curled tightly around his phone in his pocket. Up ahead, a taxi idled at the curb. Marcus moved toward it, but at that exact moment, a man in a black coat stepped out of the shadows, walking toward the same car. He wasn't looking at the taxi. He was looking at Marcus. Marcus didn't hesitate. He changed direction immediately, slipping into a narrow side street. Footsteps echoed behind him. Not running, just following. Marcus didn't know where he was going. He just knew he couldn't stop. Left, right, faster. The cold air bit at his skin, but he barely felt it. Up ahead, an alley loomed, dimly lit, a single flickering street lamp casting long shadows over puddles of rainwater. Marcus paused, listening. Silence, but the presence was still there, lingering, watching. He forced himself to take a slow, steady breath. Now, what? Marcus pulled out his phone again. No new messages, but it didn't matter anymore. The warning had already been sent. They knew. They all knew. And they wanted him to stop. But Marcus couldn't. He exhaled, then slowly stepped back out onto the main road. The black car was gone. The man in the coat had disappeared. But Marcus knew one thing for certain. They weren't finished with him. And this was only the beginning. Marcus didn't go home. Right away, he wasn't stupid enough to lead his pursuers straight to his apartment. After ducking into a narrow alley to lose any potential tails, he walked several more blocks, changed directions 3 times, then stopped at a busy intersection. He needed to be sure that no one was following, that he wasn't already marked. He needed answers, and there was only one person who could give them to him. Marcus pulled out his phone and dialed a number he no longer had, saved, but still remembered. The line rang 3 times before someone picked up. "Marcus?" A low voice, wary. Marcus lowered his tone, even as he moved through the crowded street. "I need to see you." "Now!" A pause. "You know I'm out of this, right?" Marcus pressed forward. "That's exactly why I need you. I found something, and I think they know I found it." A long exhale came through the receiver. This could get both of us into serious trouble. Marcus let out a dry laugh. "I'm already in enough trouble. So, are you in or not?" A location pinged on his phone. A small cafe. Brooklyn. The cafe, unlike the crowded cafes in Manhattan. This place was quieter. A small, old-fashioned shop with warm yellow lighting and bookshelves lining the EBE walls. But to Marcus, it didn't feel warm at all. He took a seat in the farthest corner, back against the wall, eyes locked on the entrance. David Langley didn't take long to arrive. Gray coat, lean frame, eyes sharp with suspicion. David, once one of Morgan & Lyle's top data engineers, before he abruptly left the company a year ago. He scanned the room before approaching Marcus. "I shouldn't be here," he muttered as he sat down. Marcus smirked faintly. "Neither should I." No small talk. Marcus opened his laptop and turned the screen toward David. The data was right there. Transaction records, fluctuating interest rates, untraceable deposits funneling into a personal account. Eleanor Price's account. David's expression hardened as he scanned the screen. "Shit!" He bit his lip, shaking his head. "I always knew something was off. But do you have any idea what you're getting into, Marcus? This isn't a game." Marcus met his gaze, unwavering. "I know exactly what I'm doing. I need to know what you know." Silence. Then, David reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a brown envelope. Before handing it over, he looked Marcus dead in the eyes. "Listen to me. You think you're just going after a bank? You're not. You're going after a network, people who can make you disappear, and no one will ask why." Marcus didn't blink. David exhaled. "I saw the signs a long time ago, but I stayed quiet. I didn't want to end up buried." Marcus's voice was cold. "And I can't just stand by and watch." David hesitated, then slid the envelope across the table. Inside are internal emails, system documentation, proof of how the algorithm actually works. But once you open it, there's no turning back. Marcus picked up the envelope, his grip firm. "I never had an exit in the first place." The meeting ended. David left first. Marcus stayed behind, waiting a few minutes, just to be sure. No one followed. At least, not yet. He looked down at the envelope. Inside was the truth, but maybe also his death sentence. He took a deep breath and stood. The moment he stepped out of the cafe, his phone Vibrated unknown number. Marcus answered, but said nothing. On the other end, a woman's voice, low, smooth, and laced with authority. "I'm disappointed in you, Marcus, Eleanor Price." Marcus gripped the phone tighter. "You're watching me?" A soft chuckle. "I've always been watching you. And now, I'm offering you one last piece of advice." A pause. "Walk away now, and you can still leave this unharmed." Marcus didn't hesitate, not a chance. Silence. Then, Eleanor's voice turned cold. "Then, good luck." The call ended. Marcus stood there, phone still in his hand, heartbeat steady. He knew, from this moment on, there was no way back. Marcus stepped out of the cafe, his mind spinning. He had the evidence. The documents David had given him could bring down the entire system Eleanor controlled. But if the bank had already locked down its internal channels, there was only one way: to win. Take the truth to the public. Marcus needed the media, and he knew exactly who to go to. Financial Frontline. Midtown Manhattan. The newsroom stood tall in the heart of Midtown, a sleek tower of glass and steel reflecting the glow of 100 flashing billboards. Marcus pushed through the revolving doors and stepped inside. Above him, massive TV screens displayed financial news, stock updates, interest rate changes, but nothing about Morgan and Lyle, even though it was obvious something was wrong. Marcus scanned the room, looking for the one person who could make this story matter. Michael Owens, one of New York's most respected financial journalists. He had exposed corporate corruption before, forcing CEOs to resign, bringing billion-dollar companies to their knees. If anyone would publish this story, it was him. Marcus moved toward his desk. Michael Owens looked up, frowning. "Who are you?" Marcus didn't waste time. "I have a story. A financial fraud case that needs to be told. Now. Because if you don't write about it today, no one will have the chance to write about it at all." Michael narrowed his eyes, skeptical. "Sit down. I'm listening." Marcus flipped open his laptop, quickly sending an email with the files David had given him. Michael opened the email immediately, his eyes scanning the data. Millions of dollars in unauthorized transactions, algorithm manipulation, and the destination? Eleanor Price's personal account. Marcus watched as Michael's expression changed. Curiosity turned into shock. Then, something else. Something colder. Right at that moment, Michael's phone rang. An unknown number. He hesitated, then picked up. "Owens here." Marcus stayed silent, watching him closely. At first, Michael's face remained neutral. But then, Marcus saw the shift, the slight stiffening of his shoulders, the way his fingers tightened around the phone, knuckles turning white. His gaze dropped to the desk, but he wasn't seeing anything. The call lasted less than 30 seconds. When Michael set the phone down, the light in his eyes had vanished. Without a word, he reached over and shut his laptop. "I'm sorry." Marcus frowned. "What?" Michael exhaled, leaning back in his chair, arms crossed. "I can't run this story." A slow wave of anger built in Marcus's chest. "What the hell do you mean?" Michael met his gaze, his expression no longer that of a sharp, relentless journalist. Now, there was something else. Warning. "You don't understand, Marcus." Marcus tensed. "Then explain." "Why not?" Michael rubbed his temples, his voice lower. "There are some stories I can't publish, and this is one of them." Marcus stared at him. "You've been exposing corporate fraud for 20 years, And this is where you draw the line? Michael let out a humorless laugh. You think I haven't tried before? Marcus's hands curled into fists. Morgan and Lyle called you, didn't they? Michael said nothing. And that was the answer. Disappointment twisted inside Marcus. He had thought the media would fight alongside him. But the truth was, the media was already controlled. Eleanor didn't just own the bank. She owned the story. The last door Marcus had left had just slammed shut. He had no one left to trust. No one who could help him. There was only one option now. Marcus stood, shutting his laptop. Michael didn't stop him, but his voice was heavy as he spoke. Let me give you one piece of advice. Marcus paused. Michael's expression was grave. Walk away. You're up against a monster. Marcus gripped the strap of his laptop bag and turned. He didn't need to hear any more. Outside, New York moved on, unbothered, unchanged, as if nothing was happening. But Marcus knew the truth. For him, this city had just become a battlefield. And in this war, he was completely alone. Marcus stepped out of the newsroom, his mind in turmoil. He had placed all his hopes on Michael Owens. But now he saw the brutal truth. Eleanor Price and Morgan and Lyle weren't just manipulating customers. They were manipulating the media too. If the press wouldn't expose the truth, then he would. And this time, no one would stop him. Marcus's apartment. Late night, by the time he returned home, the city was cloaked in darkness. His apartment was small but orderly, illuminated only by the pale glow of his computer screen. Outside the window, New York still glittered. But for Marcus, the city was no longer safe. He sat down at his desk, opening his laptop. The files were all there. The fraudulent transactions. The manipulated algorithm designed to keep customers trapped in debt. Millions funneled into accounts linked to Eleanor Price. The evidence was undeniable. Yet no one dared to publish it. So, Marcus would. He logged into his social media account. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating for just a second. Then, he took a deep breath. He knew the moment he pressed post, there would be no turning back. Finally, he typed the truth about Morgan and Lyle. They're using AI to trap customers in endless debt. If they won't expose it, I will. Here are the documents proving it. He attached the files, double-checked everything, and hit post. The internet erupts. Within minutes, notifications flooded his screen. The post was being shared at lightning speed. Comments poured in, skeptical at first, then furious. Is this real? Can anyone verify this? My loan rate skyrocketed too. Marcus is right. Independent journalists, finance bloggers, and watchdog groups jumped in. The hashtag #MorganLyleScam trended on Twitter within the hour. Then, Morgan and Lyle responded. Their statement spread across every major news outlet. A disgruntled former employee is spreading false information to damage our reputation. We will take legal action to protect the truth. The media framed it as a controversy. A whistleblower's allegations or a smear campaign? Morgan and Lyle denies all fraud accusations, threatens lawsuit against Marcus Reed. Anonymous accounts flooded social media, pushing a new narrative. Marcus is just bitter after being fired. If this were true, why isn't any major news outlet covering it? Don't trust everything you read online. The information war had begun. The call. Marcus sat in front of his screen, watching the headlines spin. He felt the weight pressing down on him. He was no longer a financial analyst. He was now the enemy of an empire. Then, His phone rang. Unknown number. Marcus hesitated, then answered. A low, cold voice spoke. "You just made a very big mistake." Marcus stayed silent. "Take the post down, or you'll regret it." The line went dead. His apartment was silent. Too silent. Marcus gripped his phone tighter. The message was clear. He walked over to the window, staring out at the city. New York was still dazzling, as if the world hadn't changed. But for Marcus, it had. He had declared war. And his enemy wasn't just one person. It was an entire system of power. He couldn't stop now, because if he did, they would crush him. The days after Marcus's post, Wall Street in chaos. By morning, the financial world was in freefall. Every major news outlet ran the story. Wall Street's biggest bank accused of financial manipulation. Marcus Reed, whistleblower, or fraud. As soon as the markets opened, Morgan & Lyle's stock nosedived. Investors panicked. The board scrambled. A crisis meeting was called. And at the center of it all, Eleanor Price. She would face the press. But she didn't know that today would mark her downfall. The press conference. The room was packed. Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered. Eleanor walked in, composed, dressed in flawless black. But her eyes betrayed tension. Behind her, a massive LED screen displayed a live chart. Morgan & Lyle's stock price plummeting. Journalists were waiting to pounce. Eleanor cleared her throat, delivering her scripted response. Morgan & Lyle has always operated within the law. We categorically deny these baseless allegations. Before she could continue, a reporter cut her off. Ms. Price, did the bank use AI algorithms to push low-income borrowers into debt? Eleanor forced a smile, trying to control the room. Our algorithms are designed to optimize lending. Then, the screen behind her glitched, and an audio recording played. A voice, her voice, cold, sharp, unmistakable. We don't force anyone to borrow. We just make them think they have a choice, when in reality, they don't. The room exploded. Flashes, shouts, chaos. What did you just say? That was your voice, wasn't it? Eleanor's breath hitched. She gripped the microphone, trying to regain control. This recording has been manipulated. I have nothing further to say. But no one believed her. Another reporter stepped forward, voice cutting through the noise. What about the money funneled into your personal accounts? We have documents proving you profited from these fraudulent loans. Eleanor's face drained of color. She turned to the front row, where her executives sat, waiting for someone to defend her. No one spoke. Then, the CEO of Morgan & Lyle stood. Without a word, he walked out. One by one, the board members followed. They had abandoned her. A silent betrayal. Then, a nervous assistant approached, placing a folder on the table. Eleanor opened it, hands trembling. Her termination papers. Every board member had signed it. Silence fell over the room. She gripped the document, realizing she was finished. A journalist snapped a photo. Eleanor, head bowed, holding the paper. Within minutes, the image was everywhere. The most powerful woman at Morgan & Lyle falls overnight. Eleanor Price had lost everything. The aftermath. In a small cafe, Marcus watched the live broadcast on a TV screen. Eleanor exited the conference, her face ashen. She wore dark sunglasses, but they couldn't hide her humiliation. Cameras followed as she climbed into a black car, disappearing into the New York streets. Marcus exhaled, setting down his newspaper. Around him, whispers filled the cafe. She got what she deserved. What happens to the bank now? They'll just find another scapegoat. Marcus knew this wasn't over. Eleanor had fallen, but the system behind her remained. If he stopped now, the truth would die with her. And Marcus wasn't done yet. His story wasn't over. Eleanor Price had fallen, but the bank still stood. The system kept running. Marcus had shaken an empire, but had he truly won? Or had he just scratched the surface? A new offer. Marcus sat in a sprawling conference room, the soft lighting reflecting off the sleek glass table. Across from him sat a middle-aged man in a tailored suit, smiling confidently. The CEO of Sterling Financial, a firm known for transparency and ethics. Before Marcus lay an open contract. Marcus, we're incredibly impressed with what you've done. We want you to lead our data analytics division. Marcus glanced down. A high salary, a powerful title. Everything seemed perfect. But was it? A voice echoed in his head. If I take this job, will anything actually change? Is this truly a clean bank? Or just another monster in disguise? He thought back to everything that had happened. Eleanor Price had once seemed untouchable too. Morgan and Lyle had once been a symbol of success. But beneath the surface, it had all been a lie. Marcus inhaled deeply, then looked the CEO in the eye. "Appreciate the offer," he said, pushing the contract back across the table. "But I'm not looking for a job. I'm looking for justice." Then he stood, buttoned his coat, and walked away. The real fight begins. The moment Marcus stepped outside, his phone buzzed. A new email appeared on the screen. Subject: "We need you. There are more Eleanor Prices out there." He skimmed the message. An independent financial watchdog, an organization dedicated to investigating and exposing corruption, wanted to work with him. They weren't offering a corner office or a six-figure salary. They weren't promising stock options or executive perks. They were offering one thing only: the truth. A small smile played on Marcus's lips. He stepped onto the bustling streets of New York. But for the first time, he didn't feel weighed down. Light snowflakes dusted his coat, melting as they landed. The air was cold, but inside him burned a fire of purpose. In the distance, the towers of Wall Street loomed, as unshakable as ever. But Marcus knew better than anyone. They weren't invincible. He lifted his phone, typed a response, "I'm in." Sliding the phone back into his pocket, he stepped into the crowd. As he walked, one final thought echoed in his mind. The real work is only just beginning. Marcus's story is more than just a whistleblower's tale. It's a battle against a system built on power and control. When the truth is manipulated, when the strong profit at the expense of the weak, will anyone stand up for justice? Will you stay silent? Or will you act? If you believe the truth deserves to be heard, like this video and subscribe to follow Marcus's journey. Drop a comment below. I stand with Marcus. If you're ready to fight for what's right.